Hello, Cy Wakeman. How are you?
I am fantastic, Douglas. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Before we got on, you said you were in Baja.
I am. I live right north of Cabo San Lucas
Oh,
in
nice.
Baja, Mexico. Beautiful place.
How long have you lived there?
I've been coming here over 30 years, but I've actually lived here just the last year and a half. It was one of those wonderful outcomes of COVID, a dark time, but it gave me incentive to just design the life I wanted to live. So I went for it.
It's a different life when you leave the United States, isn't it? I mean, we really are kind of isolated in a funny sort of way because I spent 3 years in Thailand teaching English back in 2007, and it's a whole different. I don't know. It's like you have to flush your mind of everything that you grew up with and start over. Not to say it was better or worse. It was just different, you know?
Right. You just realize how maybe US centric your mindset is. But for many years, I hustled and worked hard and would almost drive myself to the brink and then have a great retreat. And then I decided I'm going to design a life I didn't need to retreat from. And, that's another piece of just trying to set yourself up for emotional success. It's an important move.
Yeah, I think so. I think more people need to get out of the country for a little while and see it from the outside looking in. Changes your whole perspective. It really
It
does.
really, really does,
Yeah.
especially during, the vaccination, where many in the US were weighing the information on whether to get one or not. Seeing that from a perspective down here in Mexico of so many people desperately wanting a vaccination, and just watching how some of those decisions people are making in different countries play in the countries I'm living in. It's just very interesting.
That was funny because my producer and I were talking about that too when there was all these protests about vaccine mandates and things, and we had this huge surplus of vaccines, and there were a lot of countries that were begging for the vaccine that didn't have any. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
if Americans don't want them, then ship them out to the people that want them. You know?
I would agree with you because many of the people down here that wanted the vaccines and couldn't get them were actually the ones serving Americans who came here as tourists unvaccinated. So it was very ironic.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about you. First thing I wanted to ask you on your bio, a drama researcher. What is that?
Is that it was an accidental discovery and an unintentional career. I came to study how much time and energy people put into emotional waste in the workplace, basically feeling miserable when they don't have to. So, yes, working hard, but working hard with a grudge or working hard, resisting change or venting or scorekeeping or tattling or withholding buy-in, all those things that take away from results and happiness at work. I was able to quantify that the average good-hearted person spends about 2.5 hours a day feeling miserable when they really don't need to over really no real topic. And that's about 816 hours a year, which is a lot of time needlessly spent feeling, that you're not loving the world you're in.
That's an interesting concept. So you were able to take that and make a sort of speaking tour consulting job out of that. Did you go around to different companies and explain this phenomenon to them?
I did, at a time where so many companies are looking for, any process improvement, even a minute off of a manufacturing process was considered a huge win, with Six Sigma or TQM. And I said, you know what? We could change the way we lead and save, 2.5 hours per person per day. And I started life as a counselor. And when I went to leadership training, I saw that a lot of what they were teaching leaders to do was actually going to fuel drama, not diffuse it. So once I figured out there was this drama, I looked at traditional leadership programs and whether it would help or hurt. And, for instance, a lot of people teach that leaders are responsible for the happiness of their team members. And I certainly agree you shouldn't interfere with happiness, but it's pretty codependent for a team member to think or to outsource their well-being to a leader solely. And so I really became a disruptor and gave many presentations. We have training programs. I founded a whole development company based on what we call reality-based leadership philosophy. So we've worked with everyone from NASA to Google to Facebook to Uber, lots of great companies, a lot of healthcare organizations as well.
Do you think all of that kind of nitpicking and competitiveness in the workplace, do you think that's part of our human nature? Or is there actually a way that you've discovered to get rid of that?
There is a way to move beyond it,
Okay.
kind of rise, to transcend it. It is, I think, part of our human condition. The good news about our human nature is that we have multiple options. So I think we are definitely wired to err towards the negative, to play defense, not offense. But we also, so a lot of people say, Cy, that's just how I am, or that's my humanness. And, I'm just going to bring all of me to work. I'm going to bring, my whole self. And what I'm known to say is, please don't do that. Bring your most evolved self to work. And that doesn't mean I don't want all the diversity that makes you, you. It means that there is a place where we can come in low self or we can come in high self. And that's also available to us in our human nature, to use all of our intelligence, not just the most primitive part of our brain. And so we really help people use self-reflection to do what we call toggle up, to access their best selves, their highest selves. And one of the things we teach a lot about is stop believing everything you think. A lot of people don't understand how their mind works, and so they get played by their ego, on the daily. And if you understand that just because you thought it doesn't yet make it true, and you meet those thoughts with inquiry, that's one simple way you can use self-reflection to not get played by your ego and to see reality more clearly as it is. And that decreases your suffering, because most of our suffering comes from our story, not our reality. We have a distorted view, which errs on the side of making us the victim.
Who did you find was more guilty of that? Was it the workers at a large company? Was it the workers or was it the executives? I would guess it was the executives that were more.
I would tell you it's kind of an equal opportunity human condition thing. It may be just that the judgments were around different material, but unfortunately, executives judged employees and employees judged executives, instead of reflecting on, what each could bring to the table and being curious about each other and inviting each other into some new conversations.
So they were each equally critical of the other. Yeah.
So, yeah. And there were also in each group these brilliant spots of self, people that were really highly accountable. It had to do whether people had started work on their own evolution, whether they were working their own program. And in each rank, there are people out there that either maybe they're in a recovery program, or they are walking a spiritual path, or, they had some experiences in their life that really called them to go within and forge some wisdom so that they could, walk through the world more skillfully. And that's really what we're trying to help people do, is help them understand how the world works, how their mind works, so they can quit wishing things were different. They can quit trying to clean up whatever mess is out there, quit outsourcing their well-being, and instead use techniques, strategies, practices that have them in high self so they engage in the world differently.
Well, I think that's a great segue to your book. The title of your book is called Life's Messy, Live Happy. Things don't have to be perfect for you to be content. Is this all related to what we were just talking about? Did the book come out of this idea?
The book came out of it. I had written, my first 3 books were leadership books. And as I would teach people these techniques, and we also, one of my books is for employees, they would tell me this really helped at work. And Cy, by the way, it helped even more at home. When are you going to write a book, how to just live these principles in life? And when I would speak, I would tell a lot of life stories of my own. And I'm, willing to talk about when I practice what I preach and when I don't. And so that's where the book came out of, was a request for people to know more about how I apply these principles personally.
Speaking of practicing what you preach, you have a great line in here. It says, most of us have joined the religion of suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, when I read that, I thought of that movie, Joe versus the Volcano. Do you remember that movie? It's kind of old. There's this great opening where he's sitting in this, it's kind of fantasy-ish, but he's sitting in this just gray office with like a smoky environment, and everybody's gray and everything is drab, and he's just, one of those like old metal government desks. You remember those from like,
yes, I do.
And it's just,
I get the picture.
Yeah. It's a great movie if you ever want to check it out. I'm sure it's on Netflix, but it's got to be
add it to my list.
25 or 30 years old at this point. Well, so the book, what is the book going to do for somebody? What are they going to get out of it?
So I didn't write the book to tell people how to live. I wrote the book to recap, and it doesn't read from beginning to end. It's just chapters, vignettes, things I've learned that I invite people to try on for size and to see if it works, to see the world a bit differently. And what I hope people will get from the book is that instead of outsourcing their well-being or their happiness, instead of deferring their happiness, like, oh, I'll wait until I'm retired, or I'll wait until I have a better boss, or I'll wait, until I lose 20 pounds to be happy, that people realize that happiness is a natural state and it's their birthright, it's theirs for the asking. But there's two ways to really live. I can wake up and ask myself how I'm feeling or what's my general state of happiness. And I'll say, well, wait a minute, I have to check the news first. Oh, the news is tragic. I'm unhappy. That's external focus. Or you can wake up and say, how you doing? It's like, I'm happy. Let me check the news. It seems like there's some things in the world not going well. How can I help and impact from a place of centered and contentment? So it's helping people to find ways that they can increase their own state of contentment, even in the messiness that is our world and our life.
Would you call it a self-help book?
I would call it, we went back and forth because some people said it's a memoir with like great lessons. So I would call it a growth book. I would call it a personal growth book, because I think too many times we think we're self-help projects, and I'll be happy when I finally get organized, or I'll be happy when I finally, call people back in 24 hours. You're not flawed. You're enough. You're fine. There are techniques in the book that you're okay. The world is what it is. You can still be happy. And so it's a personal growth book. It's a book that will help with people's evolution.
Well, I think on that note, we're going to have to wind up the interview. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I do. I appreciate the time, Douglas. Our website's realitybasedleadership.com, and you can follow me on social media at Cy Wakeman.
Okay, great. And the website has links to your book if people want to purchase it?
It does.
Okay.
It does.
Super. Well, thank you again for coming on. I'll let you go. I know you said before we got on 21 interviews today, so you got to be tired. I think that's a record.
I am a little tired.
That is amazing.